So I don't feel 100% today, and it's not like illness. I don't feel ill, but this eye, I feel like somebody jabbed a hot poker into it. So I'm really anxious to do this video and the other video that I have to record today, and then getting this makeup off of my face. I don't know what is going on with this eye.
Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next palette review of my palette roulette series here on my channel, in which I pick a palette, I utilize it for a week, and then I come back to you every Monday and I talk to you about my experiences with said palette, and I show you some eye looks, I show you some live swatches, and we talk about the palette in a nutshell. I love doing this video series on my channel, love getting some usage out of the products in my collection, and that is the name of this game. It's not necessarily a brand new palette out there on the market. It is the palette I have in my collection. You might also have in your collection already. And so it's not about buying anything. It's just about getting some usage out of the stuff we already have. And I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm so happy to have you along for this journey. I hope that you love it so much that you'll want to subscribe. I am a lover of all things high-end beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a district leader for Ulta Beauty, and I like to bring you all the education that I'm receiving in that position. So I do a lot of reviews here on my channel, do a lot of hauls. I also do a lot of chatting about makeup, because truly that's all I want to do is talk to you about makeup, and nobody cares about makeup in my personal life. So I pick you, Pikachu. You people are my people, and I hope that you're in for it. I hope that you find that this channel soothes your soul as much as it soothes mine and the others that are watching me, and welcomed into my little YouTube fam here, and I would love to welcome you in as well. If you do subscribe, please let me know down in the comment section. I would love to say hi personally. With that said, let's roll into this palette review. This week we actually had two palettes. So I had the Colourpop Baroque palette and I had the Huda Beauty Purple Haze palette, and I was super excited going into this week to look at these palettes. This is the Baroque palette. It's got a really beautiful, like, cool toned color story, and then we have the Purple Haze palette, which was a really beautiful purple-ish color story from the Obsessions collection, which I have quite a few of, you guys can see there. So I am an Obsessions fan, honestly. Each one of these palettes is 9 pans, and each one of them I have a lot of stuff to say about each one of these. So I am going to try and make this as quick as possible. I like to keep these videos somewhere around the 25 to 30 minute mark. With live swatches and whatnot, it's really hard to get them shorter than that, but I do have a lot to say about each palette, so I'm just gonna kind of dive in. So the Colourpop palette is this one here. It is the Baroque palette. It is $14, or was $14, for 0.36 ounces of product, or 9 grams, which means each one of the pans in this palette was 1 gram of product, or 0.04 ounces of product, which is slightly smaller than their singles that you can buy to, like, put into its own magnetic palette. The one great thing about Colourpop eyeshadows is that they do come out of this palette and you can just keep what you want to keep in the palette in a magnetic singles eyeshadow palette if you want to, if you don't want to keep the palette in entirety. So this is what the packaging looks like. It is a beautiful, like, dark floral packaging with Baroque in some kind of like tactile gold font lettering on the front of the packaging. It is raised a little bit, but not much. I mean, not that you could tell what the letters were if you needed to tell what the letters were. And then on the back of the package, it does tell you each one of the shades in the package, and again, the name of the package. There's not a whole lot on the back of this package. How many times am I going to say package? This is what the inside of the palette looks like, again with the dark florals, and it is just a beautiful cool tone color story. So again, 9 shades in this palette. There are 3 different formulas. You have your mattes, you have shimmers, and then you have your shimmer mattes, which are basically mattes with glitter in it, which, if you're not new to my channel, you know I don't find anything spectacular about shimmer mattes. I think that that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. I think that glitter doesn't belong in a matte shadow at all. It just, most of the time, helps exacerbate the fact that they don't blend well, and it's just a filler product. So there's no reason for it, in my opinion. This is Cool Tone Grays. It does have some blues, some gunmetals in there. And the gunmetals can lean green or kind of, or not green. The gunmetals kind of can lean green or gray, depending on what they're paired with. I found that, did I just say green again? The gunmetals can kind of lean gray or lavender, depending on what they're paired with. I found that with the Purple Haze palette, a lot of the lighter, like gunmetal shades in here almost leaned purple. Like, for instance, this shadow right here, this shadow right here, which is kind of like a gunmetal gray, really leaned more lavender or periwinkle almost when I put it with the Purple Haze palette. But I do have it in my eye look today, and it's actually quite deep gray if you put it with the grays in the rest of the palette and the dark blues. This does have 5 stars on Colourpop with 120 reviews, and it was a limited edition palette and is currently out of stock, which is a shame because it went out of stock at a $10.50 price point for 9 shadows, which is phenomenal, right? This was part of the Dark Blooms collection, which I believe had 3 different palettes in it. This one called Ornate, which was kind of like yellows and oranges, and the other one, I cannot remember what it was called, and I cannot remember its color story. This is cruelty-free, and it has an insane amount of fallout. So let's just get that out of the way. I think that this is best with primer. I do think that the shadows felt thick or dense. I'm going to put this down. I do think that the shadows felt a little bit thick or dense, and I think that that also helped them perform well on bare skin versus primed skins. But the primer definitely helped with the longevity. If you're putting it on bare skin, you're not going to see the longevity of the approximate 8 to 10 hours that I saw out of these shadows. They're super pigmented. This is actually a better quality than I'm used to seeing in Colourpop eyeshadows. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm kind of a bougie bee when it comes to eyeshadows, and I don't have a lot of Colourpop in my collection. And the reason why is because I liken them right to a step up from like Morphe. And if you don't know this about me, I don't need no Morphe in my collection. I just don't. I don't think Morphe has anything out there that I need. So, but I have some. I have a lot, actually. But Colourpop I don't have very much of. I have some of their Super Shock shadows. I do have a handful of palettes, but I am not, like, I never really fully jumped onto the Colourpop bandwagon like a lot of people did when Colourpop first came onto the scene. I think a lot of that might have to do with the fact that I wasn't really part of the scene when Colourpop came on the scene. And I've always just kind of leaned more towards prestige and luxury than I have towards drugstore. The shadows blended so well. It shocked me. For a gray and dark blue palette, I was really anticipating it was going to be a patchy damn mess, but it wasn't. They blended so well. I was actually quite impressed with how these shadows performed, specifically because of their color story, if for no other reason. There are high-end and luxury brands that have a hard time coming up with this color story that functions as well as this palette did. I have on here that they were so pigmented and didn't need a lot of building up to create the shadows on your eyes in the way that you wanted them to be created. I think that they were pigmented going on and they didn't blend away, which is unheard of for grays and blues, to be honest. And they paired well with each other. They played really well with others, which I was really impressed with. There's a couple things. This shade right here, Lounge, it looks a lot more like a blue brown than it does like an eggplant purple, dark deep purple, which is what they kind of boasted it as, which didn't hurt my feelings any, but it was really dark when I went into it. I didn't anticipate, it's almost black. I didn't anticipate that color just looking at it in the pan, but also seeing what they had described it as. I was not anticipating the color on my eye. You can go really ham really fast if you don't anticipate those things. Partnered with the Purple Haze palette though, it did appear very purple. And the one thing that I found that I was missing in this palette was a light tone shimmer. So you do have this, which I think is phenomenal. First and foremost, it's actually described as a pale matte gray, but it performs very much like a white. And it was my brow bone color every single day, and that's maybe why they didn't put a light toned shimmer in here, because this one functions so well. It's my favorite. If I got rid of everything else in this palette, I would keep this because it was just so impactful, and it didn't fade away like I would anticipate it would because it's such a lighter shade. It's stark from the time you put it on until about 8 hours later, when it starts to finally fade away with the rest of the shadows. It was crazy sauce to me. I feel like this could have had a lighter tone shimmer that wasn't a duochrome, that didn't really lean any other way in the palette, but was perfect for inner corner and brow bone. I feel like there's a lot of deepness to this, and there is a lot of matte in this palette. It is 2 shades are shimmer and the rest are mattes. I kind of more like that 50-50 split, but I'm not unhappy with the shimmers in this palette or the mattes in this palette as far as that goes, but I did miss a lighter tone shimmer in this palette. I would have loved to have used a shimmer in my brow bone instead of a matte, but I didn't find that a shimmer, I didn't find that I was missing it, but I did want it. Does that make any sense? All right, let's swatch these real quick. Okay, so we have Bougie, which is that matte pale gray. This I used every single day. It was my brow bone shade every single day because I didn't really have any other option. But it is a beautiful matte pale gray. Like I said, this lasted forever, like lots longer than any other pale color of this nature would last on an eye look, in my opinion. And it performed well even on an unprimed space. And then we have Ritzy, which is a metallic shifty lavender green pink. This is a duochrome. It is in my eye look today. It's all over my lid. This was the lightest shimmer in the palette, and because of its duochrome nature and really the shiftiness from green to pink to red to brown to whatever it wanted to do, I didn't feel like it was a great brow bone shade or inner corner shade for that matter, because it can shift a little bit on the dark side. So, and you don't want that in your brow bone or your inner corner for sure. Then we have Bebe, which is a matte slate gray. This was not my favorite one in this palette. This one was a little bit more on the dusty side and a little bit harder to work with. It is in my eye look today, but I just have it in touches, not all over the place, because it was the one shadow in the palette I felt like I struggled with. It became a little bit patchy upon application and blend, so that one just wasn't my favorite, but it's still a decent shadow. It's got great pigmentation. It just doesn't blend as well as the other ones do. Then we have Secret, which is one of the glitter mattes. So I did go over that one a couple times so that you could hopefully see the glitter. So what I would say about this is a blue-gray matte with glitter. It's almost periwinkle. It looks very, very purple when you pair it with purples. The glitter does not show up unless you use it wet and pack it on and even put it on top of a glue or a tacky base. That is going to be where you're going to see the glitter. Otherwise, you cannot see it. It is in my eye look today in the crease, and you can't see the glitter at all. But this shadow was a shadow that I really enjoyed using, especially since I was using the Purple Haze palette, because I think it paired very, very well with the Purple Haze palette. Like I said, it did kind of lean a little bit purple when paired with purples. Okay, then we have Noble here, which is the other shimmer in the palette. And it's interesting because on my hand, it looks very like almost purple or lavender or taupey. Taupey. It looks almost taupey. I don't think that this showed up on my eye taupey. I think it showed up on my eye very much a metallic like blue violet. So really dark. It is labeled as a duochrome. I by no means think that this is a duochrome, even though right now, currently, as it is showing up in the screen, it does kind of have a shiftiness to it, but in an eye look, like I found myself putting other pops of shimmer on top of it just to give it the oomph and the prettiness that I wanted it to have for a lid shade. I think this is a very pretty shadow. It's just not my favorite of the shimmers. My favorite of the shimmers is the one on my lid today and the one that is that second one next to the white down there. Then we have this one here, which is called Etiquette. It is a charcoal ash gray. This is another matte with glitter. I feel like the glitter showed up in this one a little bit easier than the glitter in the secret one, the periwinkle one. But again, you still had to use it wet. You still had to use it on top of a glue or a tacky base for it to really show up. It's a beautiful gray, but I'm just not a fan of mattes with glitter in them. I feel like they're filler and there's no reason for filler in eyeshadows. I get that we're paying so much less money for these eyeshadows, but I just am not a fan of the glitter mattes. Okay, next we have this one, which is Lounge. It's the one that I said came across as almost a black. This is described as a matte, like deep purple. This is, folks, not a deep purple in your eye look. It doesn't really, I mean, it does appear as though it were an eggplant in a purpler eye look, but for the most part, this comes off as very blackened brown in every other eye look. It wasn't one that I wasn't unhappy with, but it was one that I was surprised by. And then we have this one. This one is another glitter matte. It is a black glitter matte, and it is called Grand. Again, this one does have that silver flecks of glitter in it that you really can't, they do blend away. The glitter in this black blends away. It just doesn't, the glitter just doesn't stay, you guys, which is why I don't like glitter mattes, because unless you put it on top of glue, you're not going to see any kind of impact from the glitter that's in these mattes. All right, the last one in that palette is this one here. Its name is Stunner, and it's a matte like navy. It is a beautiful matte navy. It is in my eye look today as well. It is very, very pretty. A little dabble do you with this guy. It goes a long, long ways. And it's not a bad navy. Like, I cannot believe how well this navy performed. I didn't see any kind of patchiness with it. I didn't see any kind of voiding. Blues are, you know, pretty categorically hard to make, and Colourpop did a really good job with these grays and blues. I just feel like this palette was a shock to me. While I don't like glitter in mattes, I really like this palette. I'm really shocked by it, and I will love to continue to pull for it. Will it be one that I pull from all the time? Maybe, maybe not. Do I think it's better than the Lime Crime one that I just pulled for not that long ago? Well, here's the true tea. I think that they're quite different. I don't have very many really, really black and gray and white kind of eyeshadow palettes in my collection, but this is one that I do have, and I think that, you know, I think that this one has the shimmers that this one lacks, the lighter shimmers, the beautiful shimmers. I also think that this red is going to perform like a red because I know it performs like a red, whereas this one performs like a blackened brown. I think that they're quite different. I think that they would partner together quite well, but I think that they're quite different. I also, when I think about this in terms of Natasha Denona Glam, I think that this one would be a perfect partner to that one because it's got the mattes in it that I feel like I'm missing with Natasha Denona Glam. So this one will stay in my collection. I'm actually pretty shocked by it, to be honest. Especially considering that my thoughts on this one aren't fantastic. And this is the high-end one. So this is the Huda Beauty Purple Haze Obsessions palette. This is $29 and it has 0.2 ounces of product in it, or 0.58 grams, which means each one of the pans in this palette has 0.02 ounces of product, or 0.64 grams, which is drastically different than the last palette that we just talked about with the same amount of shadows. It is absurd that this has so much less palette to it and costs so much more. Packaging is stunning. I love the packaging of this. I think that it is like the haze being kind of blurry on there. I kind of love it, actually. I got this in an IPSY, but if I'm honest with you, this is one of the haze palettes that I was actually contemplating buying back in the day when it first came out. This is what the back of it looks like. Quite a bit more information on it than what was on the Colourpop palette, but it does not have the shades on the back of this palette. Her palettes, her Obsession palettes anyways, have no names. None of the shades have names. So when it comes down to it, we have 9 shades, no names. You would never know if these appeared in another palette of hers. You would never know if she's just repeating shades over and over and over again in these because she doesn't name these shades. And this is what the inside looks like. It does have a mirror, also different from what the Colourpop palette had because the Colourpop palette did not have a mirror. It also is plastic with a snap closure, whereas this one is cardboard, right, with a magnetic closure. It's not a bad magnetic closure, but it's also not the strongest one that I have had. This one is definitely going to stay more stable when it comes to traveling with a palette. It does clasp close, and that clasp is pretty tight as far as a clasp goes. This is what the color story is. So initially you think, oh my gosh, beautiful purple palette, right? This is not all that purple, really. Yes, we have 3 purples here, but the rest of these are actually kind of rosy tones or reds even. This one is in my eye look today, and it is the red that you see in my eye look. It's actually not as purple as I anticipated it would be. And I kind of think I knew that going in. I do know that there's only 3 purples in this palette. There are 9 shades, 3 formulas. So you have your mattes, you have your shimmers, and you have your metallics. I would venture to say there's actually more like mattes, shimmers, toppers. It's kind of a peachy and purple color story inspired by a softer smoky eye than what you're going to get with blacks and browns and grays. And it's part of course, the Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes, which are an obsession out there on the market. So they're a cult favorite. And as I said at the beginning, I have quite a few of them myself. This has 3.4 stars on Sephora. 3.4 stars on Sephora with 141 reviews. And on Huda, I think it was 4.8. Quite a different marker for the star ratings, which we see often. We do. I think I would probably rank this right around the 3 stars realm. I was so disappointed with this palette. I think this palette actually is the reason why my eye hurts today. This is a cruelty-free palette. It is so powdery. There is so much fallout, and the glitter all over your face is just absurd. It is just absurd. I think I forgot to tell you, this one launched in October of 2020. This one launched in September of 2020. So the 2 palettes came out very much at the same time, right? Probably holiday launches for both brands. We are going to swatch this, and then I will talk to you about my final thoughts on this palette. Or maybe I'll talk to you about it while I'm swatching these, because I was just, like I said, really disappointed in these. I really like Huda for the most part. I mean, she does have some inconsistencies in her shadows, a lot more than I wouldn't say a lot more maybe, but a lot more than many a luxury brand. There's a lot of inconsistencies. So I always know with Huda it's a little bit hit and miss, but I was really disappointed with this. Okay, so the first one in this palette is this guy here. This is a coppery red metallic. This applied best with your finger. I would even venture to say it only applied with your finger. It was the hardest shadow to pick up on a brush. It does feel really creamy in the pan, but it just won't get onto a brush at all. And I don't know why that is. because it's really creamy. It felt really good. It was probably the best feeling shadow in this palette. The next one is this one. This one is in my eye look today. It is kind of like a ruby berry red metallic. It is really, really pretty. I enjoyed using this one. This was the only shadow in this palette that I enjoyed using. Then we have this, which is a medium purple matte. And even though that's swatched like that, the color that it actually appears on your eyes is more like this lower section here. It is very sheer. As a matter of fact, it's in my eye look. I think that you would have to strain to see it. It did not build up at all. It had very minimal wear time at all. I would venture to say around 2 hours before I saw noticeable fading. This shadow was the worst shadow. Then we have this one here. It is a kind of a rosy gold metallic, so maybe like a rose gold, right? This one did not work well with others. I feel like it was maybe a little bit thicker than many of the other shimmers in the palette. It did pick up well on a brush, but it didn't blend into other shadows very well. So if you were going to use this shadow with any other shadow, this one needed to go on bottom, and you needed to then pat the sides or the, you know, the place where you wanted to blend out with your finger or a brush, and then put some maybe like concealer on top of that, just so that it didn't like create voids in the eyeshadow that you were trying to place on top. Then we have this one here. This is kind of like a light peachy matte. As you can see, you can barely see it. There wasn't hardly any pigmentation to this. It was very dry. It was also very thin built up. It was considerably pigmented for as light as it is. I mean, it was one of those shadows that I threw down because I knew I needed to use it to get some kind of like thought process on it, but it wasn't like one that I would consider. I couldn't put it into my brow bone. It wasn't light enough. It was too peachy. I didn't want it on my eyelid because it wasn't sparkly. I didn't want it in my inner corner because then it created kind of a shadowing weirdness in my inner corner. Like, it just wasn't a shade that I could use anywhere but a transition. Then we have this purple, and this purple is a light purple shimmer. I feel like this one was more of like a frost than it was a shimmer. It didn't build up very well. It also had minimal wear time, and it was very pearly versus shimmery. Then we had this one here, which is I feel like the darkest, because that purple is not very dark at all. This is a medium, like rosy coral. I'm going to double swatch that. I feel like this one kind of has a little bit of milkiness to it, and it was actually a surprise to me because it really does look brown in the pan, and I really did think it was brown, and it just wasn't brown. Also didn't build, and it was horrible to blend. It kind of just stuck in one spot and didn't want to let go of that one spot. You could not blend this. It was awful. And that was even on a dry eye. It still just wanted to stick in the one place that you put it at the beginning. Then we have this one here, which I'm going to double swatch because you cannot see it. There's that one. Can you guys see it? The pink right there in the center. Okay. This is a muted baby pink matte. And I think that you can see it's very, very sheer. It did not build up. Minimal wear time. I don't think I remember seeing it on my eye an hour after placing it on my eye. It like the light peachy matte one down at the bottom of it was one of those shadows that I used because I knew I needed to use it. It's not a shadow I would ever pull for because it just doesn't stick around. Like I said, about an hour in, I noticed it was no longer on my eye. Then we have this one as the final shade, and this is a blackened purple with light purple glitters. I feel like this one is more of a topper than it is a shimmer. I feel like most of the quote-unquote shimmers are more of toppers. This one specifically so. This one had horrible fallout. It was horrible to try to use it with a brush. The wear time was about 4.5 hours, even with a glue. And to be honest, I think that for the most part, this palette the wear time wasn't much longer than that, but that's with a primer, of course. And if you're trying it without a primer, you might as well forget about it, because it's not even going to work on a dry eye. Exacerbated texture without a primer. Even with a primer, it exacerbated texture. I feel like it fell out all over my face. The glitters fell out specifically so, and there was no stopping the glitters from going anywhere they wanted to go. As I said, this eye has been bothering me, and I think it's because there's glitter in my eye. And they don't last at all without a primer. Maybe 1 to 2 hours. Maybe 2 to 4 hours tops. I was so disappointed with this palette. I have in my notes, I mean, ... There's probably a reason why this wasn't an IPSY box, right? I think that IPSY gets, and we've had this conversation before, I think that IPSY gets a lot of the rejects out of the beauty space, that we either get products from brands that we've never even heard of, or products from brands that we have heard of, but they're the products that couldn't sell. And I think that once people really got these palettes and started using them, they realized they were kind of poop. They're not the Obsession formula that I'm used to, and for that, this will probably not make it through a declutter, because I can't see myself ever pulling for it again. Yeah, so that's it. I had a lot to say, and I hope that you guys enjoyed them. I think that when it comes down to it, this one will probably, even though I've got this color story a couple times in my collection, I feel like it's different enough, and I feel like it's also really good. Even the glitter mattes in here, I'm not mad at. I don't think that there's any reason for a glitter matte, but I'm just glad it's not a pressed glitter. I also feel like they performed very well, which is not my experience with most glitter mattes. This one, super disappointed with. I really can't say anything else about that. So let me know what your guys' experiences are with these palettes. If you have the same palettes, I would be interested to hear your thought process on them. With that said, I'm going to go pick another palette, and we will be right back. I'm kind of on this 2 palette bandwagon right now. I did 2 palettes last week. I did 2 palettes this week. I'm going to do 2 palettes next week, and it is these 2 palettes here. I've got the Colored Rain Vivid Pigments. This is a palette that I longed for so long in my collection, and I purchased it over a year ago and haven't used it at this point. So we are going to get some usage out of it. And then the Jungle Lights palette by Flower Beauty. This is actually a cult favorite as far as shimmers go. I've never used it. It did come to me shattered, but I just repressed it because I purchased it from Ulta. I work at Ulta. I have a really hard time taking products back to where I work and go fix it for me. I knew I could press it back in and it would be fine. Although I also know that Ulta Beauty would replace it. So it's just pure laziness, and the fact that I know what happens, that pains my heart. It really pains my heart as a makeup lover. So I'm really excited to use this. I've heard a lot about these shimmers, and I've heard a lot about these mattes. And I need a little bit of color in my life because new year, new me. Not really necessarily new me, but I do need color. I've been dabbling in a lot of neutral or black lately. So I'm excited for these. I really hope that you are too. And if you are, I hope that you'll subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're notified when I upload. And I hope to see you in the next one on Monday next week. If you've used these palettes, I would love to know your thoughts on these palettes. So please leave me a comment down in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that if you did, you'll give it a big thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here. I hope that you guys had an amazing new year. I hope that, I think this is my first video of the new year. Holy cow. First video of the new year. I hope that you guys had a really great time. I hope that you and your family are staying healthy, that you're safe, that you're well, that you're doing great in this chaotic world that we're living in right now. But I do hope that you're loving each other, but loving each other from afar so that we can stay safe. And until next time, bye friends.